Hi, I'm Bruce Spangler. It's an honor to share with you this church school minute or this church school lesson. You know, one of the things that is most intriguing about life is often not what is said, but what is left unsaid or what is not said. In particular, Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, is very fascinating, and it fascinates me in terms of getting at the core, the message, or at least what I see to be the core of the message of what Robert Frost doesn't say. In a minute, we're going to be turned to a scripture passage where Jesus tells a very, very familiar parable. And what I love about that parable, once again, is not what Jesus says, but what is left unsaid. And the value of what is left unsaid really propels us to think about our life, to think about our life in the context of others, in the context of community, and how we live, how we interact, and how we behave. But let me share with you first Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged into yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged into a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Reflecting on that poem, that in some ways Robert Frost is looking back in terms of his life, and as Yogi Berra once said, that if you come to a fork in the road, take it. In this poem, Frost writes of going down one road as opposed to another. But whether that is the right decision or not is only with some reflection and afterthought and after the fact, so to speak, as you look back. So Robert Frost doesn't necessarily suggest that there's one road that's more enticing or the more appropriate one. It's simply only after we've kind of lived that moment then we really know the value of it. You remember the parable that Jesus told that often is called the prodigal son or the lost son? We all know it by heart. We know of the younger son who approaches his dad and wants everything to be given to him now. He wants his inheritance, and he goes off and he evidently squanders it all, and he realizes what he has done. He realizes what is missing in his life, and so he literally crawls back to his dad, pleading for forgiveness. And you remember the story that the father doesn't even respond to all the confessions of the young man. He simply greets him and prepares for the great feast. And you remember that the older son is now out in the fields doing all that us older children do. We're compliant and make sure that everything is done and done properly. But anyway, the older son is told that his younger brother has come back. And I'd like to read this to you. This is from Eugene Peterson's The Message. Of course, I am reading from Luke chapter 15, and I'm starting with verse 25. All this time, his younger son was out in the field. When the day's work was done, he came in. As he approached the house, he heard the music and saw the dancing. Calling over one of the houseboys, he asked, "What's going on?" And he told him, "Your brother has come home, and your father has ordered a feast. Barbecue beef, if I might add, maybe some potato salad as well, because he has come home and he is safe and sound." The older brother stalked off in an angry sulk and refused to join in. His father came out and tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen. The son said to his dad, "Look, how many years have I stayed here serving you, never giving you one moment of grief? But have you ever thrown a party for me and my friends? Then this son of yours, who has thrown away your money on loose women and all of that, shows up and you go out, all out with a feast." The father said, "Son, you don't understand. You're with me all the time, and everything that is mine is yours. But this is a wonderful time. We had to celebrate. This brother of yours was dead, and he's alive. He was lost, and now he's found." That's the end of the parable. The question remains, well, does the older son go and join the party? Or if we can continue the story, the next morning at 4 a.m., when there's a knock at the younger son's door, when his father says, "Son, it's time to go to the fields," does the younger son get up and go? All of these kind of questions are not answered, but the biggest question is, does the older son go in and join the party? The scripture doesn't say. And I think that's the value of this parable, is that the question is given to the hearer. What will you do? What will you do? One of the things that the gospel challenges each and every one of us is to take responsibility for our own lives. We often think of the Bible as an answer book. In reality, it's a question book. You remember the bracelets of what would Jesus do? In essence, I think that's the wrong question to ask. It's the wrong question to pose. It's the wrong question to live by. I think the ultimate question is, what will you do? What will you do? Living life in the context of this gospel message is not an easy thing. You remember Jesus said to love your enemies. You know, if I love my enemies, they can hurt me. If I get near my enemy, they could kill me. Why would I love someone who wants to do me harm? Why would I love someone who has maybe that desire or that passion? It doesn't make any sense. It's a hard choice. I remember Scott Simon with NPR right after 9/11. At the time, I didn't know that Simon was a Quaker by practice, but after 9/11, that event really began to question his pacifism. And began to call that it was time to react with measured response, if I may put it that way. But he received some criticism within his community of, you say that you believe this, but now in the context of you believe that. That life is that way. There's nothing easy about it. And maybe the gospel is really about making our life a little more difficult, if I may put it that way. And what I mean by difficult, that there's always a variety of choices of which we are confronted with, and they're not easy decisions. They take deliberation. They take collective wisdom. It takes measured response. And sometimes we don't have that luxury. Sometimes we have to make a decision at that very moment. So oftentimes in life that we're confronted with, though that we have the desire to have all the answers, sometimes we are simply out there and we have to decide one way or the other where we will draw the line in the sand. And I think that the value of this gospel lesson is that each and every one of us have that opportunity to respond with dignity, to respond with compassion, to respond with acts of mercy, to respond in the context of justice. I mean, that's the context of which the gospel message suggests that, or those are the parameters of the gospel message that we in some ways have committed to. But it's not easy. It's not easy. So whether Robert Frost, as he looks down that road in that poem, The Road Not Taken, it is easy to say, yes, that was the right one, but you never know it. You didn't know it while you were walking down that road. And whether you join the party or whether you get up at 4 a.m. the next morning, we all have those kind of decisions to make. And so on this Sunday morning, If there's a message for me, if there's a message for you, it is that we live our life and we live it boldly. Or as Paul suggested, we live out our salvation with fear and trembling. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But definitely it takes self-awareness. It takes self-reflection. And maybe the ultimate evil is a life without reflection, without that kind of inner thought. So thank you for joining with me on this Church School Minute, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.